is you've got to work, you've got to hustle so you can pay for those, 4 beautiful children and this whole lifestyle. But at the same time, there are things that money can't buy, like your presence there. And it's that constant pull that eventually pulled me completely out of show business, because I literally missed everything. So I missed my first son's birth. I missed my second son's birth. I was there for my third and fourth. For my third, if I'm remembering correctly, I had to leave like within days after. And that one was a struggle because our third pregnancy with my daughter was riddled with complications. My wife was on bed rest for, nearly half the pregnancy, and we had 2 kids at the time. So it was just a big mess on juggling who handled what. And, there was never an easy answer. And that kind of pulled apart my soul.
Hello and welcome to Beyond Networking, the show where we help you build a sustainable career in an unpredictable world. We believe if you learn to weave a network of people who trust you, who feel heard, understood, and valued in your presence, there will always be someone willing to hire you, buy from you, or work with you. On this show, we feature intimate conversations with legends and leaders of industries about the relationships, connections, and chance encounters that form the foundation of success. Remember to subscribe for world-class insights on how to build a life and career that you are proud of. And join our community at beyondnetworkingpodcast.com. All right, that's it for me. Now it's time to go beyond networking with this week's guest, Norman Ng. All right, Norman, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be here with me today. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. It's good to be here. Good to talk to you again, Brian. It's been a little while.
It has been a little while. We used to see each other all the time, at least a bunch of times a year, even almost passing in airports.
Absolutely.
We were both working in the same market for years. And you had been in there for in the college entertainment market for a little while before I got in. I got in 2009. When did you start in that market?
I started promoting myself to the college market when I was 21. So that would have been 2005. That's when I started.
That makes sense because you had been in it for almost 5 years before I got in, which to the average listener may not sound like a lot, but in the college entertainment market, that's like being a veteran of the market.
Oh, absolutely.
In some ways, there's so many new young people that get in and end up leaving so quickly every year that once you've been in for a couple of years, people come to you like, teach me, how do I do this?
Oh, absolutely. That happened a lot, especially at that time. Yeah, I would say, about the 5-year mark, as you said, you become the veteran. And maybe a year after, I was kind of that go-to expert that everybody look to for, how do I fill my schedule? How do I balance family life with touring life? Because I became a father when I was 24. So that was only 3 years after I started the college market. So I had all of that on my plate as well.
What was that like, starting a family while being on the road? And I ask that both as out of objective interest and also subjective interest, as my wife and I are thinking about in the next couple of years, finally starting a family and wondering about the impact that's going to have on my professional life. What was that like?
That's a great question that not a lot of people ask. And to be frank and honest, it was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. And I was touring all the way up until just a few years ago. So it was a decade-long battle of, how do you handle yourself as an aggressive professional in a very, difficult industry, be it entertainment, and balance the family social life. It was really, really hard. A lot of challenges. It's not just the challenge of time, but the challenge of attention. Because entertainment, especially magic, is unique in the sense that we don't just sell the show. We sell the show. We perform the show. We write the show. We critique the show. We edit the video for the show. It's literally like 12 jobs rolled up into one. Plus, you have to travel a lot. So it definitely created some rocky family environments. that I'm happy to say that, I made it through. I have 4 kids now, same wife, happier than ever.
I love that you threw in same wife.
I mean, it's true. And a lot of people in showbiz, it's fun. It's like a cliche. They get married, they enter show business, they divorce, and then they get remarried to someone else in show business. And
who is part of that world and
exactly
is more sympathetic to it. There's so many things that you just said that I really, really would love to talk about. Before I dive into all the different places we could go from there,
sure.
Let me back up for a second. You currently are not a full-time touring comedy magician, although you've recently started doing a little bit more again, but your full-time job now, let me ask it this way. If you're at a cocktail party these days, you just met someone for the first time and they ask you, what do you do? How do you answer these days?
These days I say I run a tractor parts development company. So my company, I Save Tractors, we make, design, develop parts for antique small tractors and small engines that nobody makes parts for anymore. So that's kind of my quick 30-second pitch. Very different than show business where I spent my entire life in.
All right. So where did that come from in your life? I mean, I know you live on, you live on a farm in Maine, right?
We do. Yep. We have an 8-acre small farm here where we raise chickens, goats, sheep, horses, vegetables, all of that.
So I actually don't know your background. I only know you as magician, and then moving forward, I never really knew you before then, or spent enough time around you to be asking things like that. So I'm going to ask now, what were you doing before magic? What was that? Were you in a farming family, a community? Where did that come from?
Oh no, that's where the story gets interesting.
I'm ready.
What you knew me is exactly what I was up until that point. I have never done anything before this other than show business. With the exception of your high school job, I worked at a retail store, and that right out of high school, I moved to California and started pursuing full-time magic as a career. And that's all. I started when I was 8 years old doing magic. And then I was competing at magic competitions all throughout my middle and high school years. And then I just went for it, became a magician. So I have no show business background, no farming background, no tractor background, no engineering background. I didn't get the background until I needed to get it, which is, I know we could fill up like a 4-hour podcast.
I'm so fascinated by that. Now, did you buy a house or buy a farm or buy land without planning on being a farmer? How did you end up getting that if you didn't come from being in farming? Or I'm so
Sure.
confused.
Yeah.
Help me.
It's actually funny. So it would be, you would call it probably my 5th chance encounter in my life. And it was meeting my high school sweetheart, Tanya, who is now my wife and the mother of all my children. She loved horses. She was like one of those girls who dreamed of having a horse. She eventually got her horse, and I was, devoted to this relationship. And that is what brought me into the rural lifestyle. Without my wife, I wouldn't be doing farming or tractoring or any of that. I'd be, still pounding the road and, doing my stage show most likely. So that was the first thing that kind of veered me in this direction. So when we moved back to Maine from California to start a family, we didn't want to, since she liked horses, she didn't want to live in the city or the suburbs. So we went way out into the sticks, bought this land that was not a farm yet. And over the last decade, we've been slowly turning it all into a farm. And that's the whole cascade that introduced me to tractors and homesteading and engineering. And from that's kind of how I got here right now.
Okay, so now every time you take me forward, I have to go back further. So
yeah, right.
It keeps coming back to the present, and I'm like, nope, we're gonna keep pulling back to the past, back to the future, as it were. So, take me back to then when you just said you were in LA. So what age were you when you moved to LA?
San Francisco. I went to San Francisco first. So I was in NorCal.
Did you say California? I must have just assumed LA.
I just say California, and you're not alone. Everybody just assumes Southern California. So I went to Northern California when I was 18, 2 months after I turned 18.
To be a magician?
To pursue magic as a full-time career. So, growing up in Maine, everyone tells you that in Maine, you can't be anything in Maine. You got to go. You got to go somewhere else. So I figured I'd go to, as far as away as I can get to the West Coast. And I did make a stop in LA. It wasn't really my thing. So I moved up to NorCal. I had a couple of extended family members there. So that made it a little bit more enjoyable. And that's kind of where I rooted myself for 5 or 6 years.
So how'd it go in LA when you're 18, you're trying to I'm taking myself back to when I was like, just like you, I was 16 when I founded my business legally. I did a few paid shows from 14 to 16. And then from 16 on, I've been a professional magician. It was part-time as I put myself through, or supported myself through college, and then full-time ever since. When you were 18, what sort of gigs were you doing? How did you end up doing? Did you go to college?
I did not go to college.
So how did you end up doing? Most college entertainers came right out of college into college entertainment because it makes the most sense, since that's what you spent the last 4 years building an act around, as the people in your immediate vicinity. How did you end up in colleges? What were you doing? Did you want to do colleges, or did you fall into that?
So colleges was a means to adjust my lifestyle. So to answer your first question, when I first moved to California, the gigs I was doing was any gig. I became like the leader of birthday parties in Northern California. In the Bay Area, I would, no exaggeration, regularly log 400 birthday parties per year. I would do 6 on a Saturday, 6 on a Sunday. And during the week, I would do like 3 daycare centers, and libraries in the afternoon. I was pounding out a ridiculous amount of shows. And it was wild because this was before like smartphones really took over. So I remember in my car, by the way, that was duct taped together because I bought it for like $1,000, held together by duct tape. And I had like a bunch of plastic sleeves with MapQuest directions.
Oh my God.
And that's how I would navigate the West Coast highways and traffic. It was wild.
I'm having so much nostalgia right now for the beginning of my career.
Exactly. So that's where I became where I found like a real magic career. Like I was able to live 100% on magic in the greater San Francisco Bay Area, which was an accomplishment for me for only being
That's amazing.
It was pretty wild. And I was just super hustler. I would never, and I still never sleep. I'm just constantly hustling away at everything I do. And to get back to the colleges, so at that point, so just to kind of take you back there. So I'm in my 20s. My girlfriend from high school, Tanya, who later becomes my wife, moves out to California too. And she's working with horses. I'm doing magic. Life is great. And then we had an unexpected pregnancy with my first son. And that's kind of where everything shifted. So I'm like, wow, we are going to have a baby. And there's no way we can afford to do that here on the West Coast. And my wife, we had already been talking about possibly moving back to Maine because she hated California. It's not her scene. So in my mind, I was already trying to figure out, all right, I want to do magic for a living. My wife doesn't want to stay here. And now I have a baby on the way. Like, how can I make this work? So I started Googling magicians, like what kind of gigs can you get where it doesn't matter where you live? So I was thinking theaters. I was thinking like corporate trade shows. I was thinking large corporate gigs. I did a couple of corporate trade shows. I talked my way through some like pretty big dollar corporate trade shows. I was awful at it. I was so bad at it. I wanted to give the money back, but I couldn't afford to give the money back. It was bad. Not my scene. Theaters, nobody took this like 20-year-old kid seriously about theaters. And I was like a little Jeff McBride clone. You know, I had like sparkles on my outfit, posing like a samurai.
Just pausing for the listeners because it's not a magic podcast. Explain real quick who Jeff McBride is.
Jeff McBride was a very iconic magician for magicians in the 80s and 90s. And his style was a mixture of like quirky artfulness with like semi-interpreted kabuki theater, Japanese style theater, and it worked for him. It's
really a sight to behold if you've never seen it.
It really
everybody, I'm gonna leave a link in the description of this episode to something from Jeff McBride. Just do yourself a favor and go look at it.
Yeah,
it's a product of its time.
Absolutely. So the theaters didn't take me seriously, and then I found out about this this college market that, like, wow, all these colleges pay lots of money to bring a performer to their college to entertain their students. And I was able to Google some artists who were doing really well doing this. And I would totally MySpace stalk them at the time and be like, where does Brian Brushwood live? He's another, well-known college performer. I'm like, Texas. And he's performing in, Maine, Boston, Washington. Let me look a little further. Oh, he lives nicely. He has a family. This could work. So
yeah.
Him and others of his contemporary were kind of laid out the groundwork to me. So I was like, okay, if I want to move to rural Maine to satisfy my family needs, the college market is the only way to make that possible if I want to still do magic. So I kind of aligned my mind to start developing material specific for that demographic, 18 to 22 college students.
Right. So now 18 to 22 college students, when you started doing the college market, I came in, as we had already discussed, 4 or 5 years after you. And so I kind of caught the tail end of the same market that you were in.
Sure.
I came in right as it started to change and has led to now 10 years plus whatever later, a very, very different market.
Yeah.
What sort of stuff? Is there a way that you can categorize the kind of comedy magic show that was appealing to students when you came into the market?
Yeah, well, when I first came in, I didn't even know what the college students appealed to. My first several years were kind of rocky. But when I did start to get really popular, what I found is the college students wanted something really in your face, high energy, and interactive. And something that was non-stereotypical. Because when I was doing it, everyone still rolled their eyes at magicians. Like, oh, where's your rabbit in your hat? Pick a card. Last time I saw a magician was my 4th birthday party. It wasn't cool yet.
Yeah.
And, thankfully that opinion has changed over time. But yeah, my style was very energetic. I would jump up as high as I could and smash someone's cell phone with a baseball bat. I was kind of a very aggressive talker, even though I'm not a very aggressive person, but I carried myself on stage a tiny bit more aggressive. I spiked my hair like a Japanese cartoon.
I remember the promo from when I first came into the circuit, and you were one of the guys I was looking at, like, I want to get to that level. I remember looking at your promo being like, is that what I have to do?
Yeah, right. So, it hit. Like, I was very fortunate I enjoyed several years where I had an envious tour schedule.
Yeah, you were doing how many college shows? It seems impossible now to do as many shows as you were doing at one point.
Yeah, if I did less than 90 college dates, I would literally have to get another job. So, and I got paid really well. That 90 college gigs is a lot of money for those who don't know. But at that point, by the time I was good, I had more kids. I was living in Maine, I was married, had a house. So, the financial burden was a lot higher. So I would regularly log between 90 and 115 college dates. And then in the summer, I would hustle like crazy and perform at, everything else, fairs, festivals, libraries, corporate gigs, all that stuff.
Just nonstop. So
nonstop.
During that time when you were, kind of working, kind of chasing your own tail, working to support the lifestyle, to keep working and all that, round and round and round. Did you enjoy the shows? Did you enjoy that time, or did it start did that demanding schedule actually start to wear on you at one point? And the reason I'm asking is because I'm getting very wary lately of the hashtag hustle culture on the internet. And I think it's making young people, especially in college or young professionals, think that the only way to success is to turn every hobby or interest they have into some version of monetized, to make some money off of everything, every second of every day. And for me, when I was at the height of, my version of what you're talking about, when I was at the height of being a magician, I just kind of started to hate magic. I just really got tired of it. And I love magic now, again, the way I did when I was first building my career, now that I'm not doing magic full time anymore. It's only 5 or 10% of my work again. So I'm curious, how did that impact your enjoyment and your ability to translate that enjoyment to the audience.
Oh, I experienced the same exact thing during the height of all this. I had a lot of personal struggles as well, trying to balance the family life and traveling life. I ended up getting really miserable, really jaded, not liked. I always loved magic. Performing on stage for that hour was the real me. Really enjoyed it, loved it, but everything surrounding that, between the getting the shows, driving to the shows, meet and greets after the shows, the hotels, I hated all of it. I actually fell into a pretty deep amount of mental depression based on that. And totally right. Yeah, the hustle culture, I'm still guilty of that. My hobby of tractors is now now a business as well. And with me, I can't seem to help myself. Everything I love, I go to the nth degree on it. But it was definitely challenging.
So on that note, I want to recall a specific personal memory of an interaction that you and I had, and I'd love to get your, if that's okay, I'd love to get
sure.
your kind of reaction to it, and if it's uncomfortable to talk about, we can cut this.
Okay. All right. Oh boy, what is this?
Well, so there was one time, and I want to say this was like 2014, but the college years have really blurred together for me at this point. So, you and I were sitting in Starbucks, in the Connecticut Convention Center, at NACA Northeast, where it's held every year, which is beautiful for me since I'm 18 minutes from it. It's fantastic. And we were at a break at one of the NACA conferences. NACA, for the listeners, is the National Association for Campus Activities. It's kind of the lifeblood of college campus entertainers and speakers. So we were just taking a break, having a little conversation, waiting for some other magicians to show up and have our own little magic convention during the break, which is always fun. And at one point, your phone buzzed and you just kind of said, hey, I'm sorry, I need to take this for a second. I said, no problem. And you looked at it, and I could see that there were photos coming up on the screen. You were looking at photos, and I just kind of said, what's that? Just being nosy. And you said, it's just my wife's sending me photos of my kids in their Halloween costumes. They're trick-or-treating. And I didn't even realize it was Halloween. Because I don't have kids. I was a college performer at a conference. I'm working. And I said, oh God, it's Halloween. And he was like, yeah, it's Halloween. And I said, I didn't mean anything by it. I said, oh God, like you're missing your kids trick-or-treating? And I'll never forget what you said. It's burned into my memory.
Okay.
You looked me in the eye and you said, I miss everything.
It's true. Yeah.
And I feel like it wasn't 6 or 8 months later that you announced you were retiring from touring.
Sure.
What's going on in your head right now as you think back on that moment?
It almost brings tears to my eyes because I didn't remember this exchange, but in detail, but it is exactly what I would have said at that time period. It was, that kind of really illustrated the struggle I was going through. And it's crazy that you remember that. So that was and that still is kind of the big issue in my life is, especially when I was touring, is you have this work life where I was the only I was the only working person in our family. My wife's was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And there was this struggle of I had, 2014, I would have had, let me think about it for a second. I would have had 3 kids with my 4th on the way.
That's my memory of this conversation.
Yeah. So in my mind is you've got to work, you've got to hustle so you can pay for those, 4 beautiful children and this whole lifestyle. But at the same time, there are things that money can't buy, like your presence there. And it's that constant pull that eventually pulled me completely out of show business because I literally missed everything. So I missed my first son's birth. I missed my second son's birth. I was there for my 3rd and 4th. For my 3rd, if I'm remembering correctly, I had to leave like within days after. And that one was a struggle because our 3rd pregnancy with my daughter was riddled with complications. My wife was on bed rest for, nearly half the pregnancy. And we had 2 kids at the time. So it was just a big mess on juggling who handled what. And, there was never an easy answer. And that kind of pulled apart my soul at that time. because, in one hand, you have your wife who's on bed rest in medical emergency. You have your 2 kids who now have to be shuffled between extended family. And then you have me, who, if I stop working, there is no money for after she comes out of the hospital. We don't have unemployment. If for a performer, if you don't show up, you don't get paid. And, that was definitely the biggest, like, I had to live with all of that. I got a lot of grief from a lot of people. My wife was great through the whole process. She understood exactly what I was going through, but I got grief from friends, from extended family. It was a very difficult time. And that's kind of what pushed me into creating a business and an economic system that could keep me here and still make enough money to support everybody. So
one just follow up on that, was your wife not working by choice or because she had to because you were never home?
That's another great question that had a whole bunch of gray area. That's kind of in a gray area. The primary thing is she couldn't work. Like, she couldn't work full time when her husband was not just working full time, but gone 24 hours a day for sometimes months at a time. So she had to be there to do the childcare. Our second son was born deaf. We got him cochlear implants. So daily she had to do linguistic therapy, audio therapy, all of that stuff. So it was
quite a burden.
And there's meetings with audiologists, sign language interpreters, teachers, special schools, the whole gamut.
She sounds like a rock star.
Oh, she certainly is. Yeah. Well, if it were up to me, I would have fallen apart, and I wouldn't have been able to do it if I were in her shoes.
Well, that's amazing. Well, I appreciate you opening up about that. But let's turn the corner on the bright and sunny thing that came out of all of that, which is, so did you know the business that you were going to start when you left touring magic, or did you just go, I can't do this anymore, I quit and I'll figure it out?
Oh, I definitely didn't do that.
Couldn't have done that, right?
I am an advanced planner in every sense. So I pretty much, the moment I got successful with performing, I did all the shows, I was on TV, got these awards. I could already see the writing on the wall that something's got to give. Like this, there's no way I can keep this up. If I keep it up, my kids will grow up to hate me. I'll get divorced, or I will go broke. So I had been planning 3 years in advance before I stopped performing. And it went through several iterations. I started a talent agency that eventually I couldn't keep up with. Being a talent agent is the least profitable industry. I don't know how talent agents do it.
Did that give you so much more empathy for all of the agents out there?
Oh, it so does. Like, to do all that work for 20% of gross is impossible. Is impossible.
I think I have to remind myself that every time one of my agents tosses me a gig that's for less money than I would have liked. Yeah. And I'm like, oh God, it's really only for that. And then I always have to stop and go, oh, they're only getting 15 to 20% of that. Yeah. And like, I'm complaining about, this amount of money that's thousands of dollars. Yeah. And they're looking at 100, they're looking at a very small amount.
And that's their top line, because they still have to pay for agents, labor, marketing, this, that. Like, I can't, it's awful. So that tanked. Yeah. And then I was researching a little bit more. And since we moved to rural Maine, this is where my whole life shifted. We needed, here, my office phone is ringing. I forgot to turn this off.
Do you need to take a break?
No, definitely not. Let me just figure out a way to silence this real quick.
That could not have been more perfect in this conversation about being on 24/7 and how hard we work.
Exactly.
Someone needs me right now.
Give me one. I'm just going to go over there and unplug our phone system. So we have a customer service department. So these people are just being transferred to me. Let me get rid of them. I'll be right back.
Okay. That.
All right, I'm sorry about that.
That is very funny, though. That is very funny.
It is. Right? I can't escape.
That happened to one of my guests, a world-renowned oncologist I had on the first season of the podcast. He was doing it from home on a snow day. He originally had planned on doing it from his office at the hospital. And I was literally asking him about the work-life balance, because he travels to give speeches all over the world constantly, and his husband basically takes care of the family. And he and literally, as he's describing the difficulties of work-life balance, one of his kids came bursting into the
Oh,
room,
right.
yelling and interrupting, and he was trying to get them out. No, I'm in the
Yeah,
middle
right.
of it. I was just like,
Yeah.
you couldn't have planned that.
Oh, it's true. That's why my office is completely locked and enclosed from everybody. You need special keypads to get in my office codes, so I got to keep everybody out too. What were we just talking about now?
So you were describing how you tried being a talent agent. That didn't work.
Oh,
You
that's
were
right.
planning ahead
Oh, yes,
for leaving
yes.
magic.
So I was planning ahead. I was trying to figure out what can I do, and I was always fascinated with the idea of selling stuff through the internet, but I didn't know what to sell. And I was reading books, studying, and then like we lived in Maine. We brought in my wife's horse. We wanted more horses. We needed and horses. I don't know if you know they each release about 50 pounds of manure every single day.
I did not know that.
it's
That's so much.
it's a lot of manure for you to just handle with a pitchfork. So we needed a tractor. So if you go and try to buy a modern day tractor, they are more expensive than your car. You're looking at like $30,000. And I'm like, no way. I can't afford that. Like I can't reasonably do that. So what I ended up doing is I bought a 40-year-old garden tractor. It was a Ford LGT 145 made in 1974. And these garden tractors back in the day, they weren't like riding lawnmowers. These were like beasts of a machine. They were like the industry. They took farm tractors and miniaturized them, but they kept all the big beefy transmission components, driveline. All of those are like farm tractor style. They just put smaller wheels on them, made it shorter, and then poof, there you go, little garden tractor. So these are like really tough machines. So I bought this, I restored it, and I built a front end loader for it, so we could handle manure. And the whole project cost about $1,500 versus $30,000. I still use it to this day. It easily handles all of the manure management for currently 4 horses, 2 goats, like 50 chickens. And when I did that, I realized looking online at like forums that, wow, there's a lot of people who do this exact same thing, that they need something bigger than a riding lawnmower, but they can't afford a larger utility tractor. So they buy these old ones, fix them up, and use them on the rural properties. I was like, wow, that's so cool. There's so many people who do this. And then this became kind of a hobby. And I kept seeing these signals pop up over and over again. And that was people complaining that they couldn't get parts, or they're now so expensive and you can't find it because these engines are 40 years old. And it got my head turning. I'm like, I want to get off the road and sell something. It all clicked. I'm like, here is a niche. I did my research on what companies supported these old tractors, and the answer was 0. There was no legitimate company doing anything like this. The only people there were some eBay sellers who would import like random quality stuff from China, and they would try to resell it to these people. And that was all you could get. And that was a mixed bag of quality and accuracy, because these were just guys doing a side hustle. They really didn't know much. So I'm like, I'm onto something. So it took me a year, but I studied everything I could on small engine mechanics, diesel mechanics, electrical, mechanical engineering, computer-aided design, materials design, everything. I crammed it all in a year's worth of time, and I became a certified master mechanic in terms of agricultural equipment and power equipment. And then I started CADing some simple stuff out, like really simple products. And I found a partner in Taiwan who was willing to help me make these products a reality.
Hang on. Before I could feel that you were about to go to the next part of the story. You found a partner in Taiwan. That sounds like a simple sentence, but I feel like what does that mean? You found a partner. How did you find them? Were you in the same circles online? Where did that come from? How do you find a partner in Taiwan for this niche business you're building that no one else does, that there's not a precedent for?
It's so complicated to answer that, and I've not answered that fully yet, so I don't even know how to answer it. I can kind of lead you. So I started by asking companies in the US to help me make these pistons and carburetors. Like, I had the specifications, I CAD'd it out, I had it all ready, and I was told to essentially get lost over and over and over again by everybody. They're like, oh, well, if you want that, it's going to cost you $50,000 in a mold, and you're going to have to buy like 100,000 units. That's if they even answered the phone and want to talk to me. I'm like, here I am. I have a great idea. I've identified a market. I had data to back it up, but pretty much everyone, just didn't give me the light of day. So I eventually started reaching out to engineering companies overseas. I didn't really want to work with any companies in mainland China, mainly because I knew I was going into a field where, the whole made in China rhetoric is not positively viewed at.
Sure.
So I jumped the border and I went to Taiwan, and I was just reaching out to people who made similar things. So I don't want to give out too much information, but our contracting partners, this was not their first rodeo, but they needed my beat and pulse on the market for them to do their thing, and I needed them to help me make stuff. So, long story short, we built a relationship, and 6 years later, here we are.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 6 years later. So I actually had that timeline right earlier in my memory.
Oh yeah, 2014 to now. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, let me pivot on this point. I'd love to come back and talk a little bit more. I definitely want to talk about more about how it got built and everything. But as long as we're on the topic of this, where you said, I don't even really know how it happened, the core theme of this show has always been about day-to-day interactions, chance encounters, really leveraging human connection as a way to build a sustainable career. Do you have a specific story before we get back to really how I Save Tractors became this amazing thing that it is now, and the YouTube channel and all this other stuff that you do that I want to talk about? Do you have a specific story of a chance encounter that was really memorable or that was really impactful either on you or on them or both, personally or professionally?
Sure. I mean, I guess it's so many. If you don't mind, I'd love to touch briefly on on a bunch of them. So
yeah, please.
One of the first, I'd say I guess we'll go chronologically. So the first major chance encounter was meeting the first magician I had ever seen. And his name is Mark Farris. And he went by the stage name, and he still does, of Almadar. And he had this magic shop right on I was like an ant going home, and his magic shop was right on the path between school and home. So I'd walk by, and all of a sudden a magic shop opens up. So I go into all my friends, and this guy, Almadar, the first trick he ever showed me is called sponge balls. You know what this is, but for the listeners, he had two little red squishy balls. He put one in my hand, one in his hand. He made his disappear, and it appeared inside my hand. Totally blew my mind. I had no explanation. And at this time, I'm elementary school. I'm about 8 years old. Like, that's where all of this happens. And it just created this feeling of cannot compute. I have no idea what just happened. It makes no sense. So every day after that point, I would stop into this magic shop with or without my friends. I never bought anything. And I would just stand in the back of the room just watching this magician amaze all the other kids coming out of school, middle schoolers, elementary schoolers, high schoolers. And I would just stand back and just watch all this unfold. And it was just absolutely mind-blowing. I was a quiet kid at the time. I remember some instances where he would put a little bit of lighter fluid in his hand and literally light his hand on fire. And it appeared like he was tossing the flame back and forth. Like, this was not a magician like at a birthday party. This was like a legitimate wizard. He was like a tough, burly Harley Davidson type guy with a beard. He looked like, a badass version of Gandalf. Like, totally just captured my imagination. And one day, the very first thing he gave to me was he gave me this little magic wand he used to make. And it was just a wooden dowel, spray painted black with like medical tape on the ends. And this is what he gives me that, and he gives me the book Amateur Magician's Amateur Magician's Handbook by Henry Hay. Yeah. And he just gave them to me, saying, "You seem like you've been really into all this. Like, check it out, see what you think." And I read that book like a dozen times. And that's how I started learning sleight of hand and magic, and that really changed my life. moving chronologically forward, and I have to give a little backstory for this one. Everyone I knew thought I was crazy because pretty much from the moment I started doing magic, I wanted to do this for a living. Like, this is it. This is my dream. And I'm sure you can attest. Everybody thinks you're nuts for doing this. And then
they can't, it like does not compute, right?
Yeah,
like you said,
exactly.
They're just like, no, but actually what do you want to do?
What's a real job? Like something you can make money with. And so I grow up from elementary to middle school to high school, not a single person taking my passion, or I should say my obsession, seriously. And then I had a really great relationship that I built in high school with a faculty person, not even a teacher, but I would say this person helped, create the person I am now. She was not even the librarian. She was the library assistant. Her name was Miss Geeson, we'll call her. I mean, that is her name. I won't give away her first name just in case, but Miss Geeson. So I was one of those kind of nerdy kids who, I was really friendly with everybody, but I wasn't like a super popular type. So for lunch, before and after school, I would go to the library and just hang out. And this woman, Miss Geeson, she would always give me these cryptoquip puzzles. Do you remember those cryptoquips? It's like
no, I don't. That does not jog my memory. Actually,
it's like a word game. So there's like a sentence, and they give you one letter or like where it places in this blank sentence, and you have to figure out what the sentence is.
Huh.
So that's how this whole relationship started between Miss Geeson and I. She would give me these puzzles, and she would teach me how to solve them, and then I got really good at solving them. And then she became my like person I'd practice magic tricks for. And from day one to when I eventually went on Penn and Teller Foolish TV show, she was always very supportive. Like, out of everyone telling me I couldn't do it, she was the only one who told me I could do it. And this was like a great idea. So that gave me the confidence to, move out of high school and go to California and pursue this. Another chance counter would be, of course, meeting my wife, Tanya. We were high school sweethearts, which is, not very common anymore for this phenomenon to happen. We started dating when we were 17, and she moved out to California with me, raised all my children, and have been with me ever since. So, there's so many ways where that was life-changing that we don't have time to talk over today. But Almadar, Miss Geeson, and my wife, Tanya, definitely the three encounters in the first third of my life that changed the course of everything.
You know what I love about those first two, obviously, when it comes to spouses and your particular story with everything we've already talked about, we could talk about that relationship forever, but that almost a topic for a different sort of podcast. But what I love about those first two in particular is how small the acts of kindness and generosity were on the part of the people that had such a ripple, not just a profound effect on your life, but when you realize that because of the path they set you off on, how many ripples that you've had on tens of thousands of audiences and college students and people out there in the world, bringing people into a magical place for an hour, giving them a break from their reality, taking their mind off their concerns, all the different things that entertainers get to do. That, if you go back to this magician that you met that, gave you a spray painted wooden dowel and a book, which couldn't have cost him total more than $20 at the time, that had just this unbelievable world changing impact for you. And then in the ripples. And I like to take those moments to just remember when we talk about day-to-day interactions and making meaningful connections with people. I feel like sometimes people get this idea that I'm trying to say, you need to spend an hour with every random person that you meet. It's like, no, it can be seconds to make a ripple.
Oh, absolutely. You're totally true. Like, especially with Almadar, the magician, the moment he took and showed me that trick, and then the moment he just, generously gave me this book to see, it was almost like a way to gauge my interest level. And he had no idea that it would turn into this. We're still very good friends today, but you're right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The interaction was small and at the time seemingly insignificant.
Right.
Even with Miss Geeson, the library assistant, just, introducing me to that cryptoquip puzzle And that's kind of what kept me in the library and kept me kind of out of trouble and focused on my goals. Like that was still, like at the time, she probably thought it was very benign and I thought it was benign. She's just like, oh, here's a kid, let's give him something to do. And here's a puzzle. And you're totally right. And then my wife as well. Like it's not like we were some big love story. It just something clicked. And
yeah, that's amazing. And that just makes me think of a mutual friend of ours, Michael Kent, who was a guest on the first season of the podcast as well. Had this fantastic episode called, I think it was called Honoring the Shame, which is beautiful about the shame and self-worth issues that entertainers go through. It was a great episode. But what he said at one point when he was telling me his story was, he said, yeah, you just don't know. You can't know the impact you're having on someone, because if you don't know that person, you don't know how they react to things.
Oh, sure.
And I feel like so often, like you're still in touch with, is Almadar? Am I getting that right?
Almadar.
Almadar. You're still in touch, but if you hadn't been, if it had just been a window, a 10-minute one-time thing, he could have still had that impact on you and never have known the impact he had on you. And I feel like that is much more common. That we have that. To that point, before we come back around to the tractor business, if you've got it, do you have a little bit more time? We got late getting started.
I've got tons of time.
All right,
I unplugged my phone, so they're just gonna have to wait.
That's great. So on that note, I've been really fascinated for the last year or so with this idea of luck and the role that luck plays in success. I want to ask you, without defining it for you, do you believe in luck?
The quote I think about the most, and I don't remember where I heard it, but I've been writing this. I've been like, even in high school, I made like little art things with it. And it was, luck is simply just a combination of opportunity plus preparedness. And that's all luck is. It's not some magical, $1 million falls on your lap. It's a result of always being prepared and always seeking opportunities. And that inevitable crossing point of the two is what we call luck. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
It does. So my follow-up to that is, do you feel like you've been lucky?
I feel like I have created a lot. I do feel like I've been lucky in the sense that I don't feel like I've been lucky and I had nothing to do with it. I feel like I've been lucky because I had something to do with it. So
that's a great way to think about it.
And even now I don't stop at this tractor business. I have a lot of things that I'm working on behind the scenes, a lot of different business endeavors, and I'm building coalitions with other Maine entrepreneurs to help flesh out more opportunities for the future. So I'm just trying to stack those odds in my favor again for when the next time, opportunity crosses preparedness.
There you go. So your kind of conception of luck is if I do everything in my power to be prepared, maybe nothing I may never get that lucky moment, but if the right moment shows up, I will have been ready for it. Is that how you're seeing it?
Kind of. I guess my perspective is I'm not waiting for that lucky moment. I'm seeking the lucky moment. I'm like, if you hid something behind a million doors, I'm not just going to randomly open a few doors here and there to find this ball that you've hidden. I'm going to open every one of those million doors and I'm going to do it systematically and I'm going to eventually get that ball. So it's just a matter of when they will cross.
That's great. I love that. So let's go back then to the tractor business. So you've got, you get it going. You have this random connection to somebody that's going to invest, right? Or a partner overseas. And somehow that comes about. And so you're like, okay, so I can actually do the thing now. So how does the thing get going? How do you go from you with an idea and someone else willing to partner on it or invest in it to you have employees now, right? Like you have a warehouse, like you have a proper business, not like when we're like self-employed, like you're a magician, you're like, I run a business. It's like, no, you're self-employed.
Sure.
You have a business now. How did you get there?
Good question. So we're in action. It's tough because there are a lot of details about this business that I've grown that is unconventional as well, and still difficult to talk about because I haven't talked about it yet. But it's a real business. We have real staff and real warehouse, real goods, all of that. How did it So your original, I'm sorry, your question was how did it go from
Yeah.
idea to this?
Yeah. How do you go from this idea and someone's willing to invest to like you have a proper
Yeah,
business and like this kind of, it's
yeah,
amazing what you've built.
yeah. Is it all comes down if you identify a need, business as simple as fulfilling that need. Like there's no other magic, for lack of better terms, involved. Like I found a subset of people who needed parts for these old engines, and now I had an opportunity to make those parts available. So I started making some of the more demanded ones available, such as carburetors, for instance, and people would buy them. I started selling on eBay just as like kind of a, it's funny how this business has progressed. It started in my basement. My once magic office studio slowly got overtaken by engine parts. And then it went from there to another part of my house, slowly took over. Then I bought an outbuilding to put in my house, filled that up. And then it started pouring into my driveway under tarps. And now we're in a full blown warehouse situation. And it was all about just in the beginning, it was just like I knew there are hundreds of thousands of people around the world searching for this stuff. And their only option was to pay absurd amounts of money for the part that was made literally 50 years prior that just sat in a warehouse. It's called new old stock. That was their only option.
Huh.
So I started putting it on eBay. People would find me. It gave me enough sales and capital to continue to push the idea with my partners. Like, hey, we're onto something. I'm onto something. Stick with me. Don't cut me off yet. And then I started a YouTube channel, and that's really where fire started spreading everywhere. And because this whole industry of tractors, it's all dominated by older people with no knowledge or use of modern day marketing tools such as social media, video. Like they're all just stuck in time back to when these machines were made. So I quickly jumped on YouTube because there's no channel devoted to any of this stuff. So I started putting out content where I would demonstrate to my potential customers why you should buy one of these old tractors from the back of someone's, house that's buried in weeds, why you should buy these tractors and fix them versus going to the store, taking out another consumer loan to buy a tractor that's way too big than you need. So I created this YouTube channel to I call it propaganda in my mind. I'm trying to sell this idea. I'm trying to convince everybody to do what I'm doing. And it caught on. Like there's a huge subset of Americans, especially that they don't want to buy new. They want to fix the old stuff. They don't want to throw it in a scrapyard. They want to like do something with their hands, but maybe a car is too expensive. Maybe a motorcycle is too dangerous. Maybe a ATV is too impractical. And then they find me, the guy who's taking all of their mechanical wants and needs of, fixing something and making it practical and, fantastic. Because I didn't just fix these tractors. I built backhoes for them. I built tank tracks for them. I did all this wild stuff. So these people are like, wow, I can do this. My wife won't kill me because I can use this tractor to like clear snow and mow the lawn. I'm not going to kill myself driving, 100 miles per hour down the road over a railroad track. Like I was able to capture all that attention, and we're still number one in all of that kind of social influence.
I was looking at, last night, I've seen it before. I probably saw it a couple years ago when you really started pushing the YouTube channel. And then I looked at it yesterday, thinking about talking to you today. And I was like, oh my God, like you have 24,000 subscribers. And what I imagine by now is millions and millions of views, right?
Yeah. Well, I think
overall,
we're over, a couple million, I believe.
Yeah. This is incredible. You call it propaganda. I kind of call this tactical empathy. Like,
right? Yeah.
You took something that like, it's not, people get this idea that like influence and persuasion and sales or marketing, like that these are kind of the sleaziness that people associate with that has been left over from the advertising era. Right. Today, marketing is much more about empathy and connecting with people. And so you've got this YouTube channel. And you're going, look, what I'm doing and what I'm selling will actually solve the problems that you have. And it works for you and you believe it'll work for them. And because you genuinely believe it'll work from them, people can sense that authenticity, I feel like, coming through these videos, and that's going to make people so much more willing to work with you. I love that I recognized that the people you were trying to reach are not on social media. And so instead of trying to convince people to come to where you are, you went to where they are.
That's right. Yeah.
And that probably sounds like you probably never even thought about it. You just did it because it made sense.
Sure.
That is a skill that so many people don't have that are in sales and in marketing, that I feel like everybody today, especially young professionals, as the world's changing on a daily basis, really need to learn that skill of meet people where they're at. Go to where they are and talk to them the way they want to be talked to, not the way that makes you comfortable.
No, that's absolutely true. And you're right. Like YouTube is where that was my window in, because even though all of my customers, it's changed a little bit now, but back then they might have not been on Instagram or Facebook, but everybody, when you have a mechanical problem, you go to YouTube. How to fix my tractor. Those were the keywords that constantly pushed me in front of my relevant customers. And as you said about the sales culture, if you watch my YouTube channel has the highest return on ad spend. And I don't spend anything on making these videos. I just make them. But like, we pay for advertisement through Google, Bing, we do all the traditional advertising as well. But YouTube brings the greatest return. And you'll see when you watch my videos, they are not commercials for my company. A lot of my popular videos, I forget to even pitch my company. I just make videos about all these awesome equipment, and it kind of speaks for itself. And it's those videos aren't really on selling you a particular part. They're on selling you to the culture of restoring and fixing these old small tractors. And that's really where it excels.
I hope everybody really took what you just said to heart, because that is the core of being influential in the modern world, which is not trying to sell people, not trying to pitch your stuff all the time. And when I say sell, I mean, everybody's in sales now. You're selling yourself in a job interview, you're selling ideas, you're selling products, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Showing up for people and just delivering generosity and kindness and respect and not asking for anything in return is what builds trust and is what leads to, like you said, people in a culture that believe in the same things you believe and therefore are more than happy to do business with you. They'd be thrilled to give you money to buy from you, because buying from you isn't just getting the thing they want, it's supporting the person who got them into the right place too.
Oh, absolutely. I get calls and emails all the time, people saying, "Oh, your video on how to do this, meant so much to me. I will buy, can I buy a hat? I don't need anything right now. Can I buy something?" And you're totally right. It's great. And I'm famous in this industry for, I help every single person. So there's several videos where I say, like, if you have a problem that I did not answer, you can call me. Here's my direct office line. Here's my email, and I will help you. Even if you don't buy parts or never buy parts, I talk to probably 5-6 people a day where I have zero to help them except my knowledge of this. So I openly refer them to other vendors and say, yeah, this guy's got it, go buy it. And there's no, that's why I named my company I Save Tractors and not I Fix Tractors, because ultimately our brand is all about just saving these machines for the customer. And the customer has a variety of reasons, more than just practicality, on why they want to restore these machines. A lot of them have nostalgia attached to it. It's their grandfather's tractor, or they learned to drive on this tractor. And that's really what I'm trying to do with this whole tractor business.
That's fantastic. I want to make sure we get, I'm going to do it for you. I'm going to make sure we get a plug in for anybody who is, for any of you, your folks who happen to be listening to this. So obviously anybody who already knows you probably already knows this, but it's, is it just iSaveTractors.com all spelled out?
Yep. You got it. Exactly.
Okay. And that'll be a link in the show notes on the podcast as well. I'll also have a link in the show notes to the YouTube channel, which is awesome. And you do have fun with your drones, which is always fun to watch.
I sure do. Oh, I try to fly that drone every chance I can. It's a blast.
It's great. I wish I had an excuse to have a drone, but I as we've mentioned, I live in the suburbs of Connecticut, and I'd look super weird flying a drone around here.
Yeah.
People would be like, he's spying on me.
It
Like, no,
does,
it's
yeah.
Amazon. It's delivering.
Yeah, right.
So, so, all right. Two quick questions to wrap
Sure.
this up. And we never even got a chance to talk about Andrew Yang. We may have to do a
Oh,
bonus
yeah.
episode to talk about your recent chance encounter. Oh, you got your Yang mug right there. Because you actually got to meet Andrew Yang recently, right?
Twice now. Yes.
Twice. Oh, I would love to meet him. But let's stay on course here, and maybe some other time talk about that,
Sure.
because that's more for me personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been
can talk
Yang
about
Gang from when nobody knew who he was.
Great.
I just don't post almost
Sure.
anything political anywhere on my socials.
Yeah.
For
No, I understand.
deliberately.
I came privy to him in August, so I guess I'm considered an earlier Yang Ganger.
Yeah.
I know you don't want to talk too much about it, but he like announced candidacy in 2017, I think. So there are those people who are truly original. And then I came aboard in August. Now I'm volunteer for his campaign, and
That's awesome.
He's the first hero I've ever had. It's pretty remarkable. We'll save that.
Okay,
For
well,
another.
since you just said that, what about him makes him a hero to you?
Well, I guess what makes Andrew Yang a hero to me is his desire and genuineness to break through kind of the political, dramatic, stuff that we all hear, the rhetoric. He wants to break through that, and he wants to just focus on the problems. And I really fell in love with his story, because here's a guy who, like, first generation born here, similar to me. So I had that relatability. And he's not from privilege. He's not from money. He kind of went through your typical kind of Asian American upbringing. You do well, you get into a good school because you did well, you do your best. And now he sees this problem. He just wants to fix the problem. And there's something so heroic about that. He doesn't want to engage with the red versus blue or the Trump supporter versus non. He just wants to stay focused on the problem. That attitude earned my respect. And the fact that he's genuine, like all these politicians, you get the sense that what they say is not always what they mean. And it kind of rubs you the wrong way. But you don't get that with Andrew. You see him speak, you see him, he means everything. And then when you meet him in person, we've all heard the phrase that you never want to meet your heroes. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of nervous about that when I first met him. And he is exactly what you would think. He's nice, he's genuine, he's intelligent, he's polite, well thought out. And that first meeting him is what caused me to be a volunteer for his campaign and help out more and help other people, get to know him.
That's so good to hear, because he does seem like that, and you always just wonder, like you said, yeah, but so have other people in the past, and it turns out that's not true. That's so great, because so here's a question in terms of connecting and perspectives and empathy and all this stuff we've been kind of on about for the last 15 minutes. What would you say to someone who is maybe identifies conservative, is maybe a Trump supporter? Nothing right or wrong about any of those things, right? But what would you say to someone about Andrew Yang to convince them to at least take a look at what he's saying, to seriously consider what he's saying?
Sure. I mean, actually, since I volunteer for the campaign, I've already spoken to a lot of Trump supporters about this. And what I would say is, first I would ask like why they think President Trump is the right answer. I always get a sense that a lot of it comes down to the economy. They want to help, they want the economy to do better. And then I would tell them to seriously consider looking up Andrew Yang's, not just his policy proposal, but his entire thought process around the economy. He has a degree in economics, Andrew Yang, so he's not just some guy with an idea. He's done the homework. He's done the data. He talks about how the way we're measuring the economy now is not accurate to the experience on the ground. Mm-hmm. So I would say to this Trump supporter, do you feel like your life is full of abundance? Like when you walk to Walmart and you go, do you feel like there are jobs everywhere? Or do you experience the same thing I experience when I go into Walmart or Target in Biddeford, Maine? There are 17 cash registers. I have never seen more than 2 open by people, and there are 8 self-serve checkout kiosks. And I would just bring that up and say, you see that too. I see it even in my little small town Maine McDonald's, more kiosks, less people. So this is an indicator of what's to come. And me being a business owner, I do the same thing. Like we want efficiency in order to meet consumer demand of faster, better, cheaper. Like we have to use automation, even software, to make it so one person can do the job of 20. And it's only going to get bigger and bigger. So I would say, just research Andrew Yang's policy because it is about the future. His whole thought process, he's a critical thinker. He doesn't just say, economy is great, check, we're done. It's like, oh, GDP indicators, corporate profits, all those are good. However, there's all these other problems that haven't been solved despite this improved economy. And instead of ignoring those people, he's trying to put them center stage. Like, so that's why I love him. He's a complete thinker, not just a narrow thinker just for political gain.
That's great. And you actually just steered me right back into what the last question I was going to ask you anyway was, which is directly speaking to the kind of young adults and young professionals that listen to this show by and large, and the educators and folks who work with them also tend to listen to this show. So the last question, you just brought up the core concern of young people, young professionals today, which is the automation and the lack of jobs and, kind of the technology taking over every aspect of our lives. How in the world am I supposed to build a sustainable career within that context? So my last question is, if you're speaking to a young professional who's going through those concerns right now, what piece of advice do you have for them in 2020 moving forward?
Sure. If you asked me this 2 months ago or 3 months ago, my answer would most likely be different. In my opinion, entrepreneurship and the ability to solve people's problems in exchange for money is probably the best and most high chance of success moving forward. Because, and this is assuming that even if Andrew Yang becomes elected and his freedom to all that stuff becomes real, you're right. Like services and business are all consolidating to software. Our business already replaces bookkeepers with software, and the list goes on and on. And the reason I'm able to do well in this industry is because I've found a market need and I've solved it. So I would encourage a young professional moving forward, have an entrepreneurial mindset of solving a group. There's a phrase called the riches are in the niches. Right now, it's still true. Like find that subset, a group of people that have a problem that nobody solved and solve it with your business or your services, your ideas. Like that's the real way to get ahead now, in my opinion.
I think that's a great answer. And I would encourage folks listening who maybe aren't thinking about entrepreneurship or being self-employed, that I don't think that you have to become an entrepreneur or go into business for yourself to apply that mindset.
Sure.
I think that mindset of find a problem, find a niche, and be the person that solves it, be the person that finds those people, and be the person that solves it is just as valuable in an organization where you're an employee as it is to go out on your own. Because I do occasionally get worried that, like, because I find myself doing it all the time. I'm a big proponent of being self-employed, right? Yeah. Like, and so I'm always like, self-employed. You got that's the best job security today is being self-employed. It flipped from when I started this, right?
Oh yeah.
But not everybody's cut out for being self-employed, and not everybody should be or wants to be. And so I think. Do you agree? Like that same mindset would be useful if you're in corporate America, if you're just an intern starting out in a new company.
Yeah, like the old school kind of thinking of, get a degree, do that job, and that degree is over. Like there's no more, get a degree in accountant, go be an accountant. Now it's you have to be accountant with some kind of X factor to bring to the table. And that's what keeps you around in an organization. That's what keeps people around in my organization too, is you can't just punch in and punch out anymore. Like the expectations are higher, and it's a result of several things. But we demand more from people nowadays. So all across the board, you gotta be a problem solver, no matter what you're doing.
Is that the thing you most look for in your own employees, problem solving?
Absolutely. Yeah. Problem solving and the ability to adapt to circumstances is definitely the most valuable thing.
I feel like this episode could be titled Adapting to Circumstances.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. It's subconsciously, I guess I keep bringing it back to that. But yeah, it's the whole reason why I'm doing so well. And it's the reason I think that other, and I say that based on experience too, because I have a lot of friends who are in show business, or I'm proud to have friends in a variety of industries. I have friends who are legitimately homeless, working, and it's not homeless in the sense where you like live on the sidewalk. It's a different definition of homeless. We can get into another time, but they work really hard. I know people who are in the tech industry, the mechanical industry, and now I just lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that? So what was I just talking about? Where were we there?
Adapting.
Oh, adapting. Yes. And nobody's job is ever really 100% secure. You kind of always have to, and it is too bad because there's no way to live, but every industry, you kind of have to always be willing to make changes and go with the flow. You can't be set in your way one way. Like, I'm a mechanic, that's what I do, and that's it. Like, you have to find why you like being a mechanic and focus on that. Because I can still to this day switch careers again. What I do now with tractors is not that different than magic. Doing magic, it was creating magic tricks, problem solving. Doing tractors is fixing things that are broken, problem solving. So I focus on that aspect of my job, and that you can carry anywhere.
I think that's a great place to end. Norman, thank you so much for such an in-depth conversation. My goal of having shorter episodes this season has gone out the window.
Yeah, right.
One episode. There is no chance this will end up being a short episode. But this is why I like doing long form. We get to have a real conversation and not just bullet points. So
absolutely.
I appreciate all of your time, and I appreciate you unplugging your phones for me.
Absolutely.
You should plug your phones back in.
Yes, I'll be working extra today.
Yeah. Man, I love that guy. Here are my 3 biggest takeaways from my conversation with Norman. First, opportunities often arise in unexpected places. Norman never dreamed of living on a farm, let alone saving old tractors. It wasn't his passion or his calling. Contrary to the popular advice that you should pursue your passion, many successful people discover success in a place they never would have looked. The passion comes later, when you choose to love what you do. Second, remember what Sean Ascanozzi taught us in the 3rd episode of this season. Our greatest joy is often on the other side of sorrow. Norman nearly lost his family to his career, and yet it was precisely from the depths of that sorrow that he built a new life, which brings him true joy. He serves a global audience of people who are genuinely grateful for the work he does and spends so much more time with his wife and kids. And finally, the most guaranteed way to build a sustainable career in an increasingly unpredictable world is to simply find a need and fill it. What does the world need? And what skills do you have, or what skills can you learn to meet that need? As always, you can find all of the related links in the show notes of this episode on beyondnetworkingpodcast.com, including how to connect with Norman across all the socials, his YouTube channel, his website, etc. If you enjoy this show, if you find value in this podcast, there are a whole bunch of free ways that you can support us because, of course, as I've always promised, there are no external ads and there are no sponsors. So how can you support us? Well, for starters, you can go to Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts and leave a rating and a review. That's really, really useful. But more than that, you can share an episode with a VIP in your life. I'm sure you know somebody who, if you enjoyed this episode, would also enjoy and find value in it. Be the person for them that turns them on to this terrific resource. Share it with them. Use the hashtag #BeyondNetworking on social media so we can find you, and thank you. And of course, you can always jump on the community email list at beyondnetworkingpodcast.com. untitled.com. That way you don't have to check your podcast app to see when there's a new episode. You'll simply get notified once a week with the new interview and also that week's episode of Thursday Thoughts, the every other Thursday short 5 to 10 minute solo episode that I do. Having said that, my name is Brian Miller. This is Beyond Networking, and we'll see you soon.